4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. This is In Pit Lane's weekly get-together where we chat about all things motorsport. It was a big Easter weekend of motorsport. We had the Bathurst 6 hours, we had the Easter Sprint Car Trail, we had a whole bunch of things. We had a whole lot of silly April Fool's Day jokes, including a ridiculous one which said that Liberty Media Formula One has bought MotoGP. How crazy can that be? I mean, they think we'll swallow anything at this time of year, really. But
86%, mind you.
86%. Yes, it's not even a true figure. I mean, really, crazy.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, nobody believed crap like that.
Well,
but anyway,
they might let the executives of Dorna still own 14% of it then.
Yeah,
I'm concerned that they might be attempting to unify the codes.
Yes, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I mean, because there has been talk over the years of what about particularly in markets like America, of having like basically a twin event where you'd have like bikes and cars on the same weekend, and of course the bike guys in particular are going, no, that is a really, really silly idea, because of obviously what would happen with the track and. The different rubber and all the whole bunch of things. They just, they're not keen on that at all. So I don't think that will happen. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that there's been talk about it for some time. I saw an interview on CNBC with somebody from Liberty Media, and it's funny what they're saying in Europe and what they're saying to the motorsport community is a little bit different from what they're saying to the wider community, particularly in the United States, because they're saying like for the race fans, for the traditional MotoGP fans around the world, they're saying, look, nothing will really change. It's Dorna are still in charge. Dorna will run it as they've always run it. The meetings will remain sort of basically run the way they've always been run, and it'll be MotoGP the way you know and love it. And then on CNBC, they're sort of saying, "Oh, we're going to radicalize this sport. I mean, it's going to change. We're going to bring out. There's going to be more popularity, more high profile sort of exposure for the riders. We're going to make them personalities. They're going to be the sort of superstars that people like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are." And so they're saying.
Well, totally. I actually think the riders are actually more popular than the F1 drivers. And they give a little bit more at the press. That's just personal opinion. I've been to the track of both fairly consistently. The riders give back a bit more than the drivers. They're more accessible anyway. But anyway, that's just personal opinion.
Yeah, well, I think girls.
Dancing girls.
And
there's always room for dancing girls.
Oh, well, you obviously didn't watch enough of Sin City, did you? Obviously,
I did. I loved Sin City.
There was a lot of dancing girls. That's what you've got. Dancing girl hangover.
Dancing girls on the brain, which is apparently the only place he does have dancing girls. Unfortunately, I know the feeling.
Where has this gone within 2 minutes already? It's gone to dancing girls in 2 minutes. Anyway,
I think what Box is saying is very true. Just waiting for Ride to survive. That's basically what Liberty was saying. That what the guy from Liberty was talking about was saying that there would be that sort of more mainstream. They would be pushing into the mainstream media, and he did sort of say how important Drive to Survive was in terms of popularizing Formula One, particularly in the United States. So I imagine it's pretty much it'll be pretty much a given that a Ride to Survive or something similar is going to turn up on our television screens.
Anyone else's favourite April Fools? Before we get off onto side tracks and red herrings and left, right, and centre, the first subject was the April Fools jokes. What was everyone else's favourite one?
Oh, the Buick hypercar.
Oh, right. Yeah. Anyone else?
As I said, I despise April Fool's Day jokes with a passion.
You started the subject.
Well, I mean, that's what I said. And the reason, and it's exactly the reason why. I mean, as Naggers are saying, I mean, He's sort of, saying the reaction to Liberty Media was, oh, well, it has to be an April Fool's Day joke. You can't release, any news, any real news that comes out on April 1st, or either, fairly close to it on whatever, part of the world you're in, is going to be instantly dismissed as, oh, well, that's an April Fool's Day joke. I mean, the media has enough trouble being taken seriously by some idiots out there as it is at the moment, without them going out every year and saying, "Oh, let's write a silly story." And nobody's, some of them are clever, but it's got old, it's got tired. It's
I disagree. I usually
can't
get bored.
stand it.
I get bored of them, but on 2 points on that note. One, my favourite was the Premiere one. Did everyone see that?
No,
Gunther Steiner hired as team principal at Premier Racing,
and a very good doctored photograph of him with in a polo, in his shirt, etc. I agree on that. That was excellent, wasn't it? I thought. Stilly, do you agree?
I thought the Tom Randall to quit racing to play a Castrol-sponsored piano for the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra was clearly, obviously, tongue-in-cheek. But some of my favourites do happen to be the Graham Goodwin concocted items from the pages of Daily Sports Car. The Buick Hypercar one certainly was a good one. Echoes of the Volvo Polestar LMP1 car rumours from several years ago that were quite good.
The Randall one would have to have been the most far-fetched, but I actually thought the Premiere one actually could have got it.
By the way, good if you're watching. Yeah. I mean, what Doc thinks of your piano playing now.
Yeah. However, the thing that gave away the Dorner one, which was actually serious, if you actually had read a paragraph into it, which I did, and didn't even contemplate an April Fool's joke, was that they were having an online forum with the CEO, etc., and you could sign into the Google Hangout or whatever streamer like where you do. So as soon as it said that, you could actually punch into it and it would take you to a link. I knew it was serious. So they don't go to all that trouble with having an online worldwide forum on the release.
And it was telegraphed during the week as well, so it wasn't a complete surprise.
And be prepared for those going to the Motorcycle Grand Prix in the future. Be prepared for it to be more corporate than
and probably more expensive. See, what I imagine the interesting thing is going to be in the whole thing is, and they've raised it already, is how much the EU will take notice of this in terms of their antitrust laws over there. Now they've already they had Bernie get rid of some parts. Bernie bought into a slice of MotoGP years ago, and the European Union turned around and said, no, that's in danger of becoming a monopoly in terms of major motorsport events, international motorsport events around Europe, and as a result, it is not happening. And there's certainly kickback from some of the whole fact that Liberty is an American company and they're taking over sort of this very European sort of organisation will get a lot of people in the European Union. It'll get their backs up, and they might decide to jump in and try and at the very least put some restrictions on Liberty Media's operations, because I think what they're worried about is that and Liberty Media have been very quickly at pains to come out and say that they're not going to leverage one event off the other. But what they're worried about is that countries that want, say, a MotoGP race or have a MotoGP race, or countries that want a Formula One Grand Prix will basically be leveraged into sort of taking the package deal. It's like, you want a Formula One Grand Prix, of course, but you don't have a MotoGP at the other end of the year, like they do in Australia, for instance. So
but they've got to have a suitable track though too to push it on them.
Yeah, well, I think that particularly in Europe, I mean, I'm sure they'll find sort of suitable tracks. It's that's what they're worried about, that it'll come into, there'll be sort of third party dealing will come in. It'll be like, if you want one, you have to buy the other, and vice versa. And Liberty have already said, no, we're not going to do that. So
You might
I
get
don't-
smoke knives. You know,
It might. I think what
Like,
in particular it might happen is an end to 3 or 4 Spanish races throughout the season.
That's the upside, yeah. But then they could be replaced by 3 or 4 American races.
or 3 or 4 Qatar races.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, yeah.
They
But
they were kind of into the Middle East more than Formula One was, and slightly earlier than Formula One was. So it's not like Qatar, of course, was a
money.
MotoGP venue long before it was a Formula One venue.
Yeah, and I saw they used Qatar in particular used MotoGP as basically a proof of concept to sort of say, hey, look, we can do this big event. The venue is capable of it. We can do it under lights. We can do it in a time slot that's going to suit you in Europe, because we've got the lights. So here it is, and I suppose that made things a little bit more comfortable for Formula One to turn around and say, okay, well, let's do it. But it'll be interesting. I mean, it's obviously a huge deal, over $4.5 billion. That so obviously they think that there's money in it, and of course the reason they're doing that, and the reason we're seeing all of these big deals at the moment is, it's content, it's streaming content. There's just this massive demand for streaming content and exclusive streaming content. And everybody is sort of saying, I mean, we've already heard that, at one stage Apple was supposedly interested in getting into Formula One for their Apple TV Plus service. Paramount Plus don't have much in the way of sport. They would like sport. I mean, Foxtel is the king in Australia simply because of all the sport they've got. I mean, but they are going to lose some of that sport over the next few years because at the moment they're the only game in town, but slowly but surely a lot of sports might
Contracts are coming due, and we've lost Brett, unfortunately.
Sorry, go back.
And they have already, like the tennis has gone to Stan, and
Yeah, so any of the
Stan, of course, being a
sorry,
Stan, of course, being allied with Channel 9, who's the host.
Well, it's all the alignment,
caster,
like you're saying, Mark, as well, too. And even though they've got the free-to-air anti-siphoning laws, etc., as was Brett sort of touched on, and Mark is now too, all the streaming platforms would be Paramount Plus, which are aligned with someone else, and so forth, and Stan, and they've all got their alignments. But what they'll do is, as Brett just touched on, they'll all add their exclusive content for that particular stuff. And they'll do more behind the scenes. They'll do more colour. They'll do the extra days of practice and the entertainment. They'll do everything they possibly can instead of just the 2 main races of a particular event. They'll do all the behind stuff and all the support events as well, though, too, within obviously their rights to be able to do. So everyone taxes on, and then it's just going to end up in a bidding war. So like back in the old days, everyone just used to bid on the cricket and the Aussie rules and the NRL and whatever, tennis, etc. Well, they'll all be bidding about, probably there'll be 20 or 30 sports they'll all be trying to get their hands on and putting value on all of them, and probably goes down to bidding and tender. And I suppose you got Cricket Australia, then you got the AFL, and you got obviously the NRL. They'll all have their governing bodies, and they'll all argue how good they are and what they're going to provide and the resources that they'll put into obviously the buyer, and we'll go from there. So Brett seems to have found his well back he's got out of his flying car and dropped back down to earth again and is going to join us. We were just discussing, I was just about how a bidding war would end up like back in the old days for AFL or cricket or something like that, but they'll all be pumping up their tyres on the value of each of the of what their sport's worth and trying to get the most popular streaming service for it, Brett.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great for the sport. I mean, it's not particularly good for the consumer, though. I mean, if you've got to go, like at the moment, we're sort of lucky in a way because there is this monopoly in Australia because, like I've got KO at home, and I mean, it gives me basically, pretty much everything that I want. It gives me Formula One and supercars and a whole bunch of other motorsport. It gives me MotoGP. It gives me the cricket, the tennis, the surfing. What's the finals at Bells today as I was wandering around. Gives me the wrestling. It'll give me WrestleMania on the weekend. It gives me everything I want. That will
curling.
But yeah, I mean, it's a one-stop shop in terms of sport, and it was what I always wanted. I mean, because when they come around and say, "Oh, would you like to put Fox, like subscribe to Foxtel?" It was like, no, because all I want is the sport. That's basically all I want. And if I could just subscribe to the sport and nothing else, I might be interested. Well, NKO came along and I could. So,
with all you curling fans, we've got the Olympics coming up soon, so don't stop being bloody bashing the bloody production companies.
This is starting to sound like a sports bet commercial.
That's one downside.
Newfound love of curling.
Yeah, that's one downside.
So they're actually advertising you can bet on Formula One if no one had noticed that.
Yeah, we sort of mentioned that. I do notice at the bottom they've got if you read the fine print, it's very clearly spelled out that, whatever betting company it is, Betfair, Betstar, Bet this, Bet that, whatever bet it is, it's like, we have no association with Formula One or any form of motorsport, so, they were using it obviously for the Grand Prix, to get a bit of guerrilla marketing there without saying that, hey, we're involved in Formula One, or that, yes, you can bet on Formula One. But it's interesting that even the AFL now, I mean, the Victorian clubs are all saying we would be happy to, even though it does bring in a ridiculous amount of money, they're in the very luxurious position of being so popular. They don't really need all that money, and they're saying right now, well, we'd be happy if it just went away. We don't need the money, and it's annoying our fans. It's annoying us, and we don't think it's good for our young audience. So, slowly but surely they're going to get pulled away.
Those curling brooms look a little bit dodgy sometimes. I reckon they've got some sort of foreign substance there, which must be illegal anyway. I reckon when they're rubbing that bloody ice.
Oh, pine tar.
Probably, yeah, something like that. I wonder if they got carbon fiber curling brooms.
Oh yeah,
now or something. That would be
underweight. That's
underweight.
You like throwing salt on the ice? Here we go.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about, corporates. Will corporate clients travel to Phillip Island like they go to Albert Park? That was clearly the problem with supercars. That was always Tony Cochrane's huge, thing against Phillip Island. He just said, we can't get the corporates will not come down. He said they won't do. There's no way of there's no convenient way of getting them here quickly. It's a horrible drive down. It's a boring drive down. When they get down here, there's very few places of, a suitable standard to stay. He just said, he said, pick up this whole track, he said, and dump it down somewhere close to a major city. He said, and it's fantastic. He said, but he said, for where it is, he said, it's in the middle of bloody nowhere. He said, and he said, it's expensive to stay at, it's expensive to get to, and the corporates don't want anything to do with it.
Well, let's stick a really big nuclear engine on it, drive it around the corner into Port Phillip Bay.
I blame Lewis Hamilton because I actually got some first-hand information from a friend of mine who works for the airport services over the weekend when I was catching up down at Bells Beach. I went down to at Torquay on Friday, which I'm dirty as because Brett can still watch it on his streaming service at home, but there was no comp last Friday when I drove.
That's
down
right.
there.
Yeah, with the conditions they had 2 days where they just
30 48 hours. 30 years I've been waiting to go down to Bells Beach, and I go down there and they have no comp. But anyway, I picked up a few seashells on the beach and no whales. Anyway, getting back to it, a friend of mine works in the airport services, and they will remain unnamed, and I will not reveal any sources like that, but they were part of a small group of people that were ushering along a particular Formula One driver. So it's one of 18, of course, or etc. it may be, or extended crew if you count some of the reserve drivers. Anyway, this particular driver's won multiple championships, so that narrows it down a few more, and maybe even more than, say, half a dozen. So he's walking through the airport, and they were ushering through, and he had a very big, solid, young security guard with him. And he was about, I'd estimate from the description I got from the person who was talking to him, about 7 foot tall and built like a brick dunny house. Yeah. So this particular person says to my very good friend I've known for 20 plus years, who was part of the airport crew, Lewis has told me over there about the toilet seats around Australia. I've got to be careful on them. And like they said, why? What do you mean? Well, you've got these spiders that are under the seat, and if they bite you on the bum, it's going to kill you or put you in hospital in a very bad way. Oh, the redbacks. Yeah, well, yeah. So Lewis has been spreading rumours around to his staff that are unbeknownst to Australia on every toilet seat, when you go around Australia to all the events you got to go to, check under the seat before you go there. So thanks very much, Lewis.
Which, of course, is very wise. Very wise.
Wait until that guy hears about drop bears. He'll panic. He'll be out of the country quicker than you can say.
I think Lewis just stuck to the spiders. That's enough to scare the bejesus out of him.
Didn't mention about other parts of your body shrinking and falling off, did he? No,
just been bitten by the redbacks. So thanks, Lewis. Good on you, mate. Got your security bloody details. Scared the hell out of going to the bathroom in Australia.
I don't know. It depends on where how bad it is. It does depend on where you get bit. I mean, hopefully, hopefully you could go to the doctor and say, look, I want the pain to go away, but can you keep the swelling?
Boom.
Hold the ice.
It's not even April 1st.
Just give me the painkillers. Don't worry about the ice pack.
Anyway, so that's Liberty Media taking over. Well, let's talk quickly about Bathurst. I know, Mark, that you definitely watched it. Don't know if anybody else caught it. Richard, I know you were going to watch it.
Caught most of it. I'm up to half an hour before it finishes at the moment.
I may have seen a small amount of it from my van.
Yes, well, you were up there, of course, weren't you? So, Dave, while we've got you, your dismembered presence on the panel at the moment, just quickly, you were there. What was it all like? It looked like a great atmosphere. It looks like everybody keeps saying that it's a really fun event.
Well, if you talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes, I'll be able to pull over at my destination. I may be able to join you in both sound and vision.
And vision.
Australia's greatest club racing meeting was the Hi-Tech Oils Bathurst 6 Hour of the Easter weekend, and a crowd of 18,000 people over 3 days. They sold out campgrounds downstairs. Sorry, in the paddock campgrounds for the first time. Massive number of people there for what was effectively,
most of those people, of course, were Excel racers.
Yes, and HQ
all wearing
races.
BMW.
There was a lot of HQs
and Pulsar races and improved production racing associates.
And 20 odd super minis.
And 20 odd super minis, yes, and the National Formula Ford series as well. So. Yes, there was something for everyone, and everyone was fond of something. So
I thought the supports went best. It was better than the race, actually. Sorry,
I love the main race.
Better expand on that, Richard.
The racing was very close. Plenty of banging of wheels and doors. Something for everyone. Okay. No,
it was certainly. It was certainly a good sort of fill up. That there was plenty of things for people to see. There weren't sort of long periods of nothing happening. There was certainly plenty of action going on. Improved productions. I mean, Adam Poole in that very fast Monaro was clearly the car to beat. But the Excels put on the regular Excel race, and Formula Ford. I mean, the first round of their series. New South Wales drivers dominating with Eddie Beswick and Mark Rutty Byrne, I think his name was. I probably got that wrong, but I did have it in the I do have it in the news for tomorrow night's edition of In Pit Lane. But they finished on equal points, 50 points each after the weekend. But Eddie Beswick was declared
Cody
the winner.
Mains Ruddy.
Jody, that's it. Yeah.
Cody.
So that was Cody. That's right, of course. that was good. That was good racing. Good racing there, and they kept it all pretty clean. And yeah, good week. As you say, the pulsars as well. I mean, because we see the pulsars down here, and it's funny how you get different states have different sort of categories. I mean, down here we've got the 944 Porsches, which don't really exist anywhere else, and up in Queensland, Mark, as you know, I mean, you'll be at Queensland Raceway on this weekend, commentating on a whole bunch of categories that just don't exist anywhere else in Australia apart from Queensland. So, and the Nissan Pulsars are down here. I mean, we see about sort of 5 or 6, or with a real good turnout, we might get 7 or 8 running with the 2-litre sports sedans in the AASA Victorian Championships. But to see the huge fields they've got up in New South Wales, I mean, is a real surprise. I mean, it really has taken off over there, and is probably giving the XLs a run for their money.
Well, the Pulsar series was born in New South Wales, so they've always had that stronger field than, say, the Victorian alternative. And the Pulsars have been huge in New South for a long time now. Actually, they're a fairly neat package as well. Like it's they're a
very quick
N14s
package.
and that Magic 2-litre Nissan engine, the SR20.
And I think that's why a lot of people like him. I know sort of, Declan Kirkham prepares, he races one, he's prepared quite a few of them. And he was saying, like, in terms of the value for money, he said, in terms of bang for your buck, he said, they're pretty much, they're only a little bit more expensive. They're getting very hard to get now, of course, like XLs and all the rest of it. But he said, in terms of what you get for your, in terms of speed, bang for your buck, they're not much more expensive or around the same price to run as an XL. And they're certainly much quicker than an XL. They handle better. They're faster in a straight line. And he said, ultimately, they're a lot, he just finds them a lot more, it's a lot more fun to drive and a lot more fun to prepare and more affordable than an XL.
I've remained quiet up until now, but it might surprise some of you. Remember, I own one. And yes, I have had it up to over 100, 200 kilometres an hour just mucking around with. So, yeah, they do fly, and they are good bang for their buck. So, anyway, that's all I'll say. But I do own one that's pretty pristine and absolutely flies like a Shanghai.
To sell that and make a profit.
No, it's not getting. No, it is in mint condition and at the back of the garage and stays that way. And it's probably the most valuable one of its kind in Australia, easily by a mile.
Well, people might forget that the N14 Pulsar, the older of the two models in the series, was actually Wheels Car of the Year when it launched in 1992. Like joint Wheels Car of the Year with the Honda NSX, which was, slightly more
expensive.
I could bang all day about Pulsars, but I'll just, you guys go.
Well,
so let's get on to the main race. The interesting thing about before the main race, a bit of controversy. Well, like minor league controversy, but there was. I mean, BMW certainly dominated the top class. The interesting thing was when you had a look at qualifying, you went, "Well, this is going to be dreary." I mean, the BMW is just going to run off into the distance, and yeah, to an extent they did. But a Mustang did lead it, I think, at one stage. That Camaro, that was a bit of a shock to the system as well. It did very, very well. The BMWs were fast, but they were at times a bit fragile. But is that a problem? I mean, John Bower in particular was saying that he just felt that the BMWs were simply too fast. He said that they just, they really just, it was a major disincentive to a lot of the more grassroots competitors driving in quite more normal cars to be absolutely blown away by these very expensive, very fast and BMW super machines, which were literally in a class of their own.
So this is where people need to take a step back and recognise that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different races going on at any one time.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially in a Bathurst 6 air. There's Class X, which is the domain of the BMWs, and indeed could be the domain of any other
car that's available in Class X, including the Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio, the Audi TTRS Plus. I think there's an Audi RS4 and RS5 in there somewhere. You know, there
Presumably
are
the
available.
Kia Stinger could drop in there.
The Kia Stinger would be in Class A1, I believe, based on
Okay.
power to weight. So the classing
Too heavy.
structure is based on a power to weight and other modifiers for performance. So when you look at the cars in the classing, and this is not a secret, it's not some secret source. If you obtain a copy of the Bathurst 6-hour supplementary regulations, which are available on their website, right down the back in the appendix is a list of applicable models. So Class X is where you find the M2, the M3, the M4 from BMW, which are widely regarded as the most capable four-seater sedan / coupe, sports sedan touring cars available. The key thing to remember about production car racing is that there is a price cap. If you navigate to redbook.com.au and you have a look at the manufacturer's stated retail pricing, that's including luxury car tax, not including any on-road costs, the cars must cost no more than $150,000. And this is the bone of contention, is that up until about 10 years ago, that price cap was $100,000, which is why you had cars like the Class B1 second place car, I believe, the BMW 335i. The fastest BMW you could get was a twin-turbo 335i. You couldn't get an M3, you couldn't get an M4. It wouldn't fit under the price cap, but a 335 would. So we had, the first years of the reborn Bathurst 12-hour, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. It was a battle between Evos, STIs, BMW 335s and 135s, and HSV Club Sports. Basically what we now have is the Class A1 and A2 battle. Indeed, the Class B1 and B2 battle. The price cap for production cars was lifted from $100,000 to $150,000. That then meant that, the fastest weapon, again, we went from 7 races to 8 races, is now between the M2, the M3, and the M4.
Relevant to a question for you, Sillies.
And you want to talk about the expenditure.
Can I ask a question?
You can buy, if I finish, you could buy Anthony Sewell's, class winning capable BMW M4. He had it up on Facebook Marketplace for about $225,000. A very similar amount will buy you a Class A2 podium capable Mustang from Ryan McLeod. So, that's about the same sort of expenditure. Whether you want to build a Suzuki Swift for Class E or you want to build an M3 or an M4 for Class X, if you buy everything brand new and you build it to the same level, you'll still spend quite a lot of money to go grassroots endurance racing in Class E. You had a question, Doc?
Yeah, you've gone past it now where it was at that point of you talking about. I know what it is, but it's nothing to do with what you finished off with. So.
The interesting thing was...
We need to celebrate the class winners a lot more. And I think we need to give credit, to the graphics package that the broadcast team put together. It very clearly pointed out that there were different winners in class. The commentators were at pains to point out some of the really good performances in class, like the Team Bacchini top 10 outright all-female crew from Class B1. We talked about, the Class A2 cars leading at the front during that earlier stage of the race, while the Class X cars were getting more of their compulsory pit stops out of the way and losing track position. Because the Class X cars have to complete a minimum of 6 compulsory pit stops, 90 seconds from pit in to pit out, before they're allowed to get on with the rest of the race. Every class down from there has to complete no more than 4. That's the Class A and Class B cars. And some of the D&E cars only have to complete 3 compulsory pit stops. So there are some performance balancing measures in place from a sporting measure to try to have more cars in the hunt at the end. But I think we need to recognise, we talk about the outright podium. How about the fact that on the lead lap, still, a Class A1 Golf R from Jem Usel and Co., the 222 Harding Performance sponsored car, went kind of unnoticed all day, except for when it accidentally tapped the Lexus round at Forest Elbow, earning themselves a driving infringement at their next compulsory pit stop. We need to focus on celebrating the class performances, and unfortunately, a lot of those Class A2 potential outright contenders basically either threw it away or had it snatched from them with some dramas. We had 2 or 3 Mustangs crash out, in the early and to mid stages of the race, including the Ryder and Tony Quinn and Grant Denyer game over Mustang. It probably really is game over for that Mustang now. It
very
is
much so.
toast. But also the first Camaro to appear in production car racing in Australia. They were looking really strong. It was great battle between the two of them, well matched in performance. They had an overhead fuel rig problem, meant they couldn't get enough fuel into the car at the pit stops, so they had to do more pit stops, and that took them out of contention. But unfortunately, the way the telecast works is that we finished the race at 5:45. It's got to be all wrapped up with a podium by 6 o'clock for the news, and they only get a chance to really do the outright podium and the outright podium interviews as far as the broadcast goes, and then it cuts off. At which point, every other class from A1 down to E gets their time on the podium, gets their photographs, gets to spray some champagne, but it's not included in the big overall product, because the main TV goes, the people just want to see the big outright podium. We get the same thing at the Bathurst 12 hour. The big huge outright winners get to take all the glory and spray all the champagne, and it's only once the cameras have stopped rolling or the broadcasts stopped going international that we get through every other class, where people have still put in hours and weeks and months of blood, sweat, tears and effort just to make it to the event. But it's the stories that come out of the event that will get more coverage, through some of the specialist motorsport media, that really sell the spirit of the event. The late night rebuilds, the Bathurst TAFE and panel shop adventures of straightening chassis rails at 3 a.m. in the morning, competitors loaning each other vital components to get cars back on the grid.
Well, that happened with the winner, didn't it? I mean, that was Jada's car. I mean, the winning car, Barry Clinton, who eventually I think finished third place. They wouldn't have. Jaden wasn't. They weren't even going to race until sort of Barry came along and said, "Hang on, what's wrong? Do you need a? Okay, we've got that part here. You can have ours."
Yeah. And, that spirit of camaraderie, I mean, the garages are all open. There's no awning stopping people. There's no heavy-handed security guards. No one's walking around, with 3 bodyguards because they're too high profile to deal with the punters. It's such a relaxed atmosphere. As I've lost my backlighting. Excuse me for a moment while I add some mood lighting. This is an event that really is... we talk about sometimes, state racing being, Australia's best kept secret. The Bathurst 6 Hour is rapidly becoming that in terms of a national event, in terms of having profile. It is a bit harder to encourage people to get to, given that it's at Easter, particularly when other people have, the financial controllers that might say, how about we have a family weekend that doesn't involve motor racing? Definitely being... I was just, pleased that we had so many volunteer Motorsport Australia officials available to conduct the event safely and get it all done. Because come Sunday evening, there were a lot of people that were still smiling about having spent 3 days at Mount Panorama over the Easter weekend.
Well, it's such a popular event. I mean, like our mate John Hindhoff from Radio Le Mans Radio and Radio Show Limited. I mean, Hindy has said publicly, not just here, not just for sort of local consumption, but he said on Midweek Motorsport, and he said in a few interviews that it's actually his favourite event, and it's one that not just because he came out once to commentate on it, but he said ever since then, I'd love to go back and commentate on it, but boy, I'd much prefer to go back and drive the damn thing, and I think that's something that they should put. They should put in plan for next year. I mean, let's make that a campaign. Let's get Hindy a drive in the Bathurst 6 Hour. So,
considering that Mr. Crail now has his own race team, albeit in Aussie racing cars, might be the next endeavour for Johnson Crail Racing Enterprises. Might team up with some of the folks from 1-800 Lasagna and put together a Class E Mazda 3 capability. And that's the thing about this race is that racing at Mount Panorama is expensive. Whether you're doing it in a support category or a main category at the 6 Hour all the way through to the 12 Hour and the 1,000, there is no cheap racing at Bathurst. However, it's a matter of how much you want to spend. And these stories of these teams that put together cars that have come from stat write-offs and hail-damaged wrecks. The story of the Camry team putting a car that originally ran in, was it the 1997 or the 1998 Super
98
Touring
Bathurst
Bathurst
1000,
1000? They scraped 25 years of liveries and paint off the thing and put it back to as close to the original livery as they could. They picked up a car on the way to the track for $500 as a spares package. All the way up and down the field, there were cars on trailers that, like, wait, is that someone's spare race car? No, that's a flood damaged write-off. That's a rollover stat write-off. That's there on a because it's quick and easy to find exactly where the part is, because you just, whatever you've unbolted on the car in the garage, you go and get it off the car over there on the trailer.
That's the beauty of production car racing. I remember once many years ago, Subaru lent me a WRX to STI for a weekend to take it down to Phillip Island, and I got it down to Phillip Island, and I was quickly on the phone to the people at Subaru saying, some of the teams here have got, wondering if they can use my loaner car to take bits off to run in their race. And Subaru, of course, said, no, that's not going to happen. But that's the thing. It was the old days of sort of, you'd actually hear it. I mean, Richard would probably remember that you'd occasionally hear at a race meeting somewhere, if there are any owners of a GTHO Falcon parked in there who would be willing to perhaps loan a small part to Mr. Alan Moffat, could you please go to the paddock and...
I've made one of those calls when a Ford Focus team required some assistance from a car in the car park. They were pleading and pleading for someone to donate a piece from their Focus. So yeah.
I remember, it must have been the first 6 hour. They allowed Westfields, which are a Lotus 7 replica in, and qualifying, boom, up goes the motor, and someone was parked, turned up to Bathurst to watch this Westfield, and they walked up and said, "Can we take your motor, please?" He gave it to them. I assume he didn't have to push his car home.
Yeah, well, I would imagine it's like, you break it, you own it. But I mean, it was a fun weekend. But I think that there certainly were concerns. I mean, John Bowe in particular was just saying, he said, watching the speed differential between those top BMWs, he said, and some of the cars down in the, and he said, yes, he said it is the responsibility of the faster drivers. And he said, it didn't worry him that, for people like Will Davison and Tommy Randall and Jaden and all of those guys. He said, but there are there are so-called gentleman drivers in there who may not be as skilled and may not necessarily always do the right thing. And he just said some of the closing speed over the top of the hill sometimes, he said, was and he was in a Ford Focus, which wasn't the slowest car. Unfortunately, it blew a head gasket right at the start of the race, so he didn't get sort of many laps in it. But he said, look, it really was. He said it really was scary. He said, I'd hate to think that, like eventually we're going to get to the stage where they're going to say, look, class C, D, and E, they're just they're just not far, too dangerous. We'll have to get rid of them, or we'll have to put them in a separate race or something like that. So he was sort of saying, look, if a category has got to go, let's start culling from the top and not culling from the bottom.
Well, if we can continue to have a Nürburgring 24-hour where we have GT3 cars running at the front, and we have things like the Dacia Logan and the Opel Manta Foxtail still cruising around, I think we're going to be able to manage to run some BMW M3s and M4s up against some Suzuki Swifts. Now, a Toyota Camry from the mid-90s that's struggling quite a bit, maybe there are cars that, need to spend a bit more time in the museum as opposed to on the road. But, it's all part of the challenge. I mean, even if we took away Class X and we went back to a theoretical $100,000 maximum spend limit, there are still quite a lot of potent cars from BMW, from Mercedes, from Audi, Even from Chevrolet and Ford that are under $100,000. I mean, John Bowe might have been, and the guys in the Focus RS might have felt there was a fair bit of speed differential and a bit of bow wave, when the M2 and M3 cars came past them. But have a think how someone in a Class E, a Toyota Corolla or an Echo or a Suzuki Swift feels when a
Mazda
Focus
3s,
RS or an A2 Mustang comes past them. It's like Tasmania. It's all relative.
Oh. Yeah, it was a good race. I mean, I'd hate to see them tinker with it too much, but it would be nice to see it a bit closer, have a bit more variety at the very top of the. Because I mean, that is what you're focused on. But ultimately, I mean, it turned out to be one hell of a race. I mean, a very close finish. I mean, there was absolutely, it was less than a sheet of paper between second and third. And you had lots of good drivers, lots of supercar drivers, coming across and having an absolute ball and getting involved. And I can just see it being like a really good meeting. I really did want to go up. I mean, John sort of said, "Hey, you're coming up," and it was like, I just, as you say, it's so expensive to go up there. Even like, I mean, the 12 hour is sort of my yearly thing to Bathurst because. It is a lot of money to go up there, even just to spectate. By the time you are, and even if you camp, I mean, it's you're still going to see no change from $1,500 to $2,000.
I was going to say we need to convert Getsy into a pop top camper van.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have camped there I was lucky for a couple of years. I mean, one year I got a lend of a Renault, and the other year I got a lend of a Fiat, a couple of vans, and that made life an awful lot more comfortable. But the one year that I did camp in the tent up there, I mean, it was also one of the windiest years I can remember there, and I was waking up in the middle of the night with the bed sort of doing an impersonation of Linda Blair and The Exorcist. It was sort of and I mean, and that's lifting me. I mean, I'm a lot heavier than Linda was.
So it sounds like camping.
How did you know?
Pretty intense.
Yes, very, very intense. But it was, as I said, the one thing that I really did like, the one beauty of camping at Bathurst was sort of it calmed down on sort of the late on the first night I was there, and I went out at about. I couldn't sleep, my back was sore, and I thought I'll get up and wander out. And I wandered out, and I sat out the front of the tent, and I looked up at that Mount Panorama sign, and there were stars in the sky, and I just went, "Yeah, no, I can see the attraction of this. This is good."
Yeah.
Mind you, Bill Tuckey always used to talk about the spirit of the mountain in his writing, so maybe there was an actual spirit that visited you that time.
Well, it's funny you should say that.
Maybe it was the three spirits of Jim, Jack, and John.
Well, it was. It's funny you should say that because Bill talking about it, and of course obviously the local Indigenous people have a very strong say it's a very strong spiritual place, and as Doc knows, I mean we've got the interview with Jules Gunon, and he said he felt something. He said there is something strange here. He said there is a spirit. He said I don't know. He said but the first time I came here and the first time I drove here, he said there was just something about this place that said that this was very special, and and he absolutely loves the place. So it's interesting that there is sort of, it does have some connection. It does have a certain power and a certain there is the spirit of the place is very strong over there, and it gets a lot of people in and affects a lot of people in a lot of different ways. But anyway, it was a good race there, and congratulations to Jaden Ojeda. As I've said before, I really rate Jaden Ojeda as a very, very good driver. I think he's got a lot of talent, and given the opportunity, he has the potential to go far. Speaking of going far, and I know the one thing I haven't done as I get my shoulder moving again is I didn't put the ticker up because, as you can see, Jalen Robotham is joining Climax Racing for GT World Challenge Asia. This was announced tonight. Jalen's already doing some racing in Asia. He's been running in the Thai Super Series, which has been very popular as well. But he's running this is the AMG Mercedes that he's going to be running for Climax Racing in a couple of rounds in some of the endurance rounds. So, congratulations to Jalen. And he's, as I said, he's also running in the Thai Super Series, where he's been running a Trans Am, but he's also running the trucks, one of the trucks as well. He's running a Ford Ranger over there, and their trucks are really interesting to have a look at. They put on some good racing. So, and all of the races are live on YouTube, and there's coming up, I think May is the first one. So check that out. Would love to go over there and have a look at that and do a story on it. It's something I've been looking at it for quite a few years now, even before the pandemic. And in the last year or so, it's really, really taken off. It's a really good. It's a really good series. Coming up this weekend, Formula One. Is it normal transmission is being resumed? Does Max run away with it, or is there now a bit of a doubt?
Well, I mean, McLaren managed to put in a really good effort at Japan last year, and we saw it at Albert Park. Obviously, once Max was out of the picture, that Sergio Perez couldn't get past either of the Ferraris or either of the McLarens. So it bodes well for McLaren heading to Japan.
The interesting thing about Sergio Perez is the rumours are growing that he might end up staying at Red Bull. There's certainly talk in the Mexican media saying that there's a lot of Mexican money behind Sergio, and Red Bull, even a team as big as Red Bull, are saying that he's doing enough to possibly say they're not in a desperate situation to get rid of him. They would like him. Helmut Marko has come out and said, really, as far as he's concerned, he thinks his main problem is qualifying. He said if he qualified better, he'd be in a better position to sort of play second fiddle to but he's always coming from behind because his qualifying is often so bad. So be interesting to see. The good thing is, of course, being in Japan, it's basically in our time zone, so we can watch that on the weekend. So that'll be good.
Marko was as critical of Checo last year about the same period as what he is with Daniel this year. So you probably got to put a month by month basis on what Marko says. Do you agree, Pete?
But that was also this time last year. It was Miami, and that's down the order. So and Miami's where
critical though.
Miami was where it went pear shaped for Sergio last year.
Yeah, so that's it'll depend on how they all do over the next few. As I said, once they get to Europe, everything will settle down a bit, and I think that's when they'll start sorting out the wheat from the chaff. And obviously, Max is on top, and then there's the battle between everybody else, and it's going to be interesting to see who goes where. The story coming out of Europe at the moment also is apparently Audi are putting a lot of pressure on Carlos Sainz at the moment to basically commit to them when they come in. They've been very keen to have him because of their connection with his father and that family connection. They've been very keen to have him on board, but they apparently they want him to commit sooner rather than later. They don't want to be caught at the end of the year where and suddenly find out that we've got to go looking for somebody else because Carlos has decided to jump into Red Bull or somewhere like that. So they certainly want him to make a commitment within the next couple of races, so they know where they stand. And so once he's sort of locked away, then that's another sort of another bit of the puzzle that's solved for next year.
And Audi have virtually taken over Sauber already. They're virtually they've taken over already.
Yeah, they jumped in earlier than expected, and basically because there were some people within Audi who said, we're going to be too far. But if we come in and just as we originally planned, we're going to be so far behind the 8 ball. We need to be involved in this new car, the new engine, the whole thing. We need to be doing this now. We need to be working closely with the team now. We need to have some say in what's happening now. Otherwise,
the development takes so long, doesn't it, Brett?
Yeah, we're going to be so far behind.
The other thing is they needed to get in now and pay 100% of the current price that was agreed upon in their earlier agreements with Peter Sauber and the former financier whose name escapes me. They needed get in and pay 100% of the previously agreed contract price, as opposed to what the new and improved contract price might be, given the Drive to Survive effect. And I think the recent entertainment consortium that Ryan Reynolds is part of, that bought part of Alpine, I think that effectively, gave a value of the Alpine F1 organization as somewhere close to $800 or $900 million US. Whereas, I think Audi wanted to pay an awful lot less than that for the Sauber facilities and team. So, better to own 100% of it at the low price than own 50% of it at the low price and then have to pay the other 50% at an exorbitant price in a year's time.
Buy now, save later.
Well,
Okay, so that's coming up this weekend as well on the local scene. Coming up, I'm hoping that we've got more GT4 news coming up locally. That's really finally. I mean, I've been saying for ages now. I was amazed that just hadn't taken off in Australia. Well, now it looks like it is. There's more cars and more drivers being announced. Sam Brabham and Antonio Astuti are going to be running with the Love family in a couple of AMG Mercedes GT4s. They're racing in the Mechachrome GT4 series, which will start at Phillip Island. Monochrome. The Mechachrome is the engine. Yeah. But
hey, look, it's a black and white difference between those two sponsors.
It is, but it's interesting that they go, and also we've said that we've obviously got Chaz Mostert's team is getting involved, and we've had announcements today of more new drives. So who's driving the McLaren again? Slipped my mind for a second. I'm not sure. Hang on, we're not breaking an embargo. There's so many embargoes running around at the moment. But anyway,
that'd probably be Josh Buchan in the ticket going.
Josh Buchan has got there. So we've got he's running. That's right. He's running the GT4 as well as running, of course, the Hyundai in the TC4 series. So he'll have a busy weekend. That's looking like a really, really good meeting. That one. I mean, the Sandown round was terrible. It was really, it was a bit of a joke, quite frankly. This sort of, turns things around totally the opposite. I mean, there's just so many categories, so many races. It's going to be a really big weekend. You've got the Radical Cuppers down there. You've got the Porsche Michelin Challenge. You've got TCR, Trans Am, GT4, GT3. It's a huge weekend. It's going to be it really sounds like if the weather's good, it'll be a great weekend to get down there, I think.
Absolutely. Tickets at motorsporttickets.com.au.
Yeah, or just grab something. Perhaps hint, they could give us some tickets to give away on next week's edition of In Pit Lane. We are trying to get people in.
If only we knew someone from Motorsport Australia who worked in the media and promotions department, who'd previously had a connection to Channel 31's extraordinary In Pit Lane program.
Yes, I wonder about that. There might be. I can't think of who'd be there, but yes, we'll see what we can do. But we are trying to get hold of some people. I've certainly got feelers out to both the GT3 and GT4 community, and also Gary Rogers Motorsport and a few people to try and get some people in. It would be good if they came in and sort of promoted it before the event. I mean, it's always great to, as I said, it's worth promoting. I think it's going to be a really good meeting, and they should be out there and promoting it and plugging it as much as possible. And it'd be very disappointing if once again we get to sort of next week's show and it's like, oh, sorry, nobody's available. Couldn't come in. It's a long way into Melbourne from Oakley or wherever. It's whatever. It would be good to have some people in, and we can certainly talk about it. Coming up on tomorrow night's show, our guest is coming from the United States of America. His name's Sam Stubbs. You've probably never heard of him before. He's Samuel Stubbs, as he likes to be known. He's actually the host of a NASCAR podcast called Below the Yellow Line. And I caught up with him. He reached out to me and said, if you want to talk about NASCAR stuff at any stage, give me a call. I'm happy for a chat. And I asked him about sort of the Shane Van Gisbergen effect, which has really sort of taken off in America. Racer Magazine, which is probably the leading publication for circuit racing in America. Kelly Crandall, who's a very experienced NASCAR journalist, described Van Gisbergen as the breath of fresh air that NASCAR desperately needed. So caught up with Samuel and asked him about Shane, and he's got a lot of really interesting things to say, not just about Shane, but what Shane's success may mean for the future of supercar racing here in Australia and supercar races, because he said there's no doubt, he said, that within the NASCAR community at the moment, he said a lot of teams are taking a very, very close look at more supercar drivers. And of course, this weekend, Friday American time, but Saturday morning our time, Cam Waters will be there. This was announced, unfortunately, about 3 or 4 hours after our interview with Samuel. I mean, Samuel sent me back an email and said, "Oh my God, have you just heard? Cam Waters is coming across from Martinsville." So that was released over there. But once again, he did a media conference. NASCAR media got in touch with me sort of late last night and said, there's going to be a NASCAR media online media conference tomorrow. Like 1 o'clock our time. I need to stay up for it, of course, but I have seen some. And once again, I mean, just American media everywhere sort of get around, very excited about him coming across, and was he hoping to catch up with Shane Van Gisbergen, and what Shane Van Gisbergen, he's become an absolute superstar over there, and he's still not even in the main event yet.
And they've already got an exhibit in the Hall of Fame.
In the Hall of Fame, yes, after his one win. But as Sam says, I'll give it a bit away tomorrow. He said that just floored everyone because he said it was like he's sitting there going, what the? Nobody could like this. No, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to happen. Who the hell is this guy? So it really did freak them out. But as they were saying, I mean, as I pointed out in the interview, it's a very different, in terms of the media, it's a very, very different Shane Van Gisbergen than the one we've seen out here. He's on all the podcasts, he's on all the media, he's relaxed, he's joking. It's the Shane that we know away from the camera. So he's learned to relax. He's a lot more comfortable over there now, and he's obviously having a ball. So. But that's tomorrow night. Also tomorrow night. What? Just quickly.
You'll need to call tomorrow night's show something different, because once you go below the yellow line, you're not in pit lane. You're on pit road.
Well, this is true, but we're getting together tomorrow night, and hopefully we'll be doing some other things together over the course of the year. Really nice young guy. So if you check out the podcast, if you're interested, he does basically 4 shows a week. He does a preview of the trucks, the Xfinity series, also the main event. Then he does a wrap up for the weekend. He's only a young guy. He's very, very. He's one of these American kids who's just sort of he's like 17 going on 45. He's just very articulate, very professional, knows his stuff. Was really good to deal with. Also tomorrow night, just quickly, we're going to take you back to Rob Roy and the Rob Roy revival. There was so much stuff we didn't have time to cover when we did the story at the start of the year. So we're going to take you back. We're going to catch up with a couple of people driving cars, including Graham Whincup with the next Bob Jane Tirana GTR XU1 that he and Ron Harrop have had a hand in putting back together again. So you'll see that tomorrow night on In Pit Lane as well, 9:30 on Channel 31 Melbourne, as well as, of course, on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. But look, I think that's about all that we've got time for this week, guys. I mean, it's been it was a relatively quiet week. We've got the Pro Motocross Series at Horsham this Sunday. That's quite a drive. But if you're looking for a good drive, head out to Horsham and check that out. Also coming up this weekend, I don't think spectators are allowed, unfortunately, but I'm hoping to get out at some stage, if I can possibly do it, on probably Saturday. I'm hoping to go out to Calder Park, because PIARC have got their access meeting out there, which includes the latest round of the Victorian Superkart Championship. Now, Superkarts running around Calder, just boggles the mind. So
That's a bit bumpy, yeah.
yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, it's very. That's my thoughts, and watching them come over. Bob's Knob is going to be. Pretty much everything's getting air over that at the moment. I don't recall cars actually jumping over the top of that. They got light. You always got light coming over the top of it, but now there's a whole bunch of. Now you see a whole bunch of cars. Like everything from the hyper races to excels and sports sedans and all sorts of things. Sort of all four wheels in the air. So God knows what happens with supercarts flying over the top.
Already get airborne over at places like the at the bridge at Eastern Creek. The tunnel under the circuit where that rise is.
Yeah, they used to do that. They had a couple of races at Sandown many years ago too, and they stopped that pretty quickly because I think from basically the bottom, the bottom of the straight through turn 1 2, they were hardly using their tyres at all. They were just flying. It was pretty scary to watch at times, but anyway, it's coming up on the weekend.
Did you want my roundup I promised last week?
Oh, okay. Well, let's get that. Yes, let's catch up with that. Yep.
Yes,
okay.
MotoGP, yes. Yep. So quickly, they tested in Qatar back in February 9th and 20th. They've had the 2 races. Qatar was on the 8th and 11th of March, and then they had Portugal the 22nd to the 25th of March, a couple of weeks later. Just incidentally, the 86%, as you said about the Dawn and Takeover, which we're having a bit of fun with at the start of the program, Carmelo Ezpeleta has been the CEO since 1994 of that organisation. So he sort of knows what he's doing, and he's been around a long time in that neck of the woods. Anyway, Qatar, Bagnaia won, Binder second, Martin third. But in Portugal, Martin was first, Bastianini second, and Acosta. Just before I get to that second race, that was the Miller. Miller was ended up 5th and 4th was Binder, but Miller was 21st in the first race. So as Brett said a couple of weeks ago, he's sort of maybe fighting for his spot, but the 5th might have settled things down in the last race. And also in the Portugal race was where the big romance between Bagnaia and Marquez when they knocked each other out with about 5 laps to go, which was a bit of fun. Everyone can look up that, so I'm not going to bore on that. However, I just wanted to bring up a Pedro Acosta because it's been big news. He is 19 years of age. He is only the third teenager ever to be on the podium of MotoGP, which is pretty huge. And also, he's the first teenager that's been on the podium since 1979. So it's been that long since a teenager's been on there. So there's some good key facts I picked up as well, though, too. Also, Repsol Honda has someone's brought up an embarrassing gaffe they made back in 2020. Because everyone started doing a bit of, especially Ducati 2020-21. The quote was, "Aero, that'll last a year." Now everyone's doing an aero, including Honda. So they've been throwing egg in their face. And, of course, I think Repsol Hondas are the only 4-cylinder inline engine on the grid. So they're maybe a little bit behind the times there. There's a little bit of pressure on Binder as well, though, too, because he's been a bin it or win it, boom, boom. Maybe this year he can be a bit more consistent. And to sum it, just a quick one. They have MotoGP themselves have released the first time ever today, I think in the last few hours. It's only a 3-minute presentation, a 3D video of the bikes from all the teams this year, and they look fantastic on that. I only watched about 30 seconds of it, but it looks really, really good. And to finish it all off, 13th to the 15th of April is the next race, and it's the Red Bull GP of the Americas. There you go.
Okay,
we'll see now that Liberty Media is moving in on MotoGP that we'll see DRS introduced on those aerodynamic elements on MotoGP.
Actually, one more point, Mark. Exactly. Martin has got an 18-point lead in the championship too. That remind me of, so that DRS will help him.
Now, Mark, you're behind the microphone this weekend again. Tell us about the Queensland Racing Drivers Championship at Queensland Raceway.
Oh, I am so toey. It's been a long off season. Starting in April this year for when most years we get going at the end of February. Big field for this weekend at Queensland Raceway. The Track Attack XL Cup, of course, the original Australian XL Motor Racing Series. Replica Tourers are out there in force, and with their eclectic mix of racing vehicles, supercars. So yeah, 2 states running supercars this weekend. The Australian Trans Ams, and for those of you who I don't want to lead you in false pretenses there. Australian Trans Ams is the historic Trans Am racing series. It's not one of the 2 versions of TA2 that's going around. These
So more
are
your Mustangs
period.
and Camaros and
Well, yeah, I mean, but
Firebirds.
obviously they both have Mustangs and Camaros, but
Yeah,
these
the
are 1960s
old
and
ones.
1970s cars, and plus we get some fine looking bits of Mopar in that from either Dodge Challengers or Plymouth Dusters or yeah. Trans Am's, also the Queensland Production Ute Series will be there, sharing its field with the Hot Hatch Cup. They've gone V8 a couple of years ago. Like Production Ute started as a 6-cylinder only class. They've brought V8s into that as well, and that's actually seen a couple of old V8 Ute Series cars from the old Pro Car days.
So that's coming. I think Marcus
Mark's just
frozen there.
frozen.
Mark's just frozen there, which
Doing
is
his
highly
Disney
unusual
best.
in Queensland. But
Yeah.
but anyway, that's
Usually
coming up this
melting.
weekend. If you're up in Queensland, Queensland Raceway. Anybody up in Queensland, by the way, watching, and Mark, if you can still hear us,
And fro-
and frozen now.
It's
Yeah,
got to
if
be a
anybody's
Disney movie.
if you've got
Yeah,
if anybody's up
Frozen.
there, if anybody's up
Disney.
there, filming anything at all, and they want us to send us if they can get us down a package in time for next week's In Pit Lane, we're always happy to. We'd be happy to cover some of it and do a story on the news about it as well. But we would.
And I'll be
So if
happy to help
anybody's up
out with
there,
anyone doing that.
yeah, so if
One that we missed, Brett, was the Shannon's Vintage Bikes racing was on the weekend. We were both slipped under the radar for both.
Yeah,
of us.
well, it was at Broadford apparently. That would have been a good weekend. Yeah.
I only dropped out there for about an hour, but I was quite surprised at the spectator, and they offered camping as well too at a reasonably cheap price for only $10 a night. That's how cheap
Yeah, it's
that
good.
was.
It's good out there. That's
Yeah.
I've certainly thought, like, if I did anything up at Broadford last time I went up there for the Victorian State Series, I stayed at a motel, sort of, like a couple of towns away. And it was still and it was okay, but it was expensive. I saw the setup they had out there. It's nothing lavish, but I mean, it's very quick. But they've got showers, they've got toilets. You can set up a fire there, a fire pit.
Well, you can stay at my parents' place if you want to, but I'm not going to charge anything at night. But you can use the power there if you want, and then you can mow the grass at the same time for us.
That's good too. No, I think we know what happens when I mow the grass.
But anyway, I took a few pics and I sent them off to Brett. There was the pit garages were quite full. I was very surprised. There's some beautiful bikes there.
And of course, bikes will be coming up at the historic Winton, which is in May as well. So we've got a lot of things coming up over the next few weeks on In Pit Lane. As I said, it's really just a problem at the moment of getting guests to come in and talk about it. I mean, as I said, we've got events coming up, and we sort of say, "Hey, would you like to come on and have a bit of a chat and about the race meeting or about your category?" And it's like, "Oh, no, I can't be bothered, mate." So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. But we do have, I'll tell you what we do have once again this week. We've got more great music coming up. We've got the world's debut of Veiled Arch. They're a Melbourne band. We had last year, I think it was last year, or it might have even been late the year before, we had a band called Dark Thorn on, and a couple of the guys from Dark Thorn.
Phil joined us last year, Brett, for a solo act, remember, or with just friends, and then the year before it was with the former band Dark Thorn, yeah.
With the band, but they put a new band, and they're about to release their first album together, and they're coming out, and they're going to join us for a couple of songs next week on In Pit Lane as well. So it'll be good to get back in the studio. I must admit, I'd forgotten how boring and how long it took to put together a show by yourself. So it'll be fabulous to get back into the studios at RMIT next Tuesday night. In the meantime, have a good weekend. Happy WrestleMania weekend to you all. That's probably what I'm going to be doing for a lot of the weekend. But as I said, if I can get out to Calder, if it's at all possible, particularly on the Saturday, I'm going to try and get out and get some footage that we can put on In Pit Lane for next week as well, of supercarts doing insane things around Calder Park. So anyway, thanks to everybody for joining us once again. We'll see you tomorrow night on In Pit Lane at 9:30 on Channel 31 or the YouTube channel. And apart from that, we'll see you next week here on Full Course Yellow. So from all of us here, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
All right.